You are listening to the voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. Today, we are talking with Alan Cohen, having a conversation about, do we have the courage to break our own rules? And the thing is, whether we're walking into a culture that we have set ourselves or that was given to us, we have a choice. We have a choice to say, does this work or does this not? And we must have the courage to make sure that we are always acting not out of perceived integrity, but I'm going to say actual integrity here, because it's our values and it's our different interpretations of those values when we bring people together that create friction in companies and in families and in society as a whole. And so being able to really know who we are, where we are, and what we are doing allows us to make sure that we are first loving and in love with ourselves so that we can bring that love to our actions. And it brings an inherent respect. I use the word love a lot here because it's a part of who I am. Yet this particular show, if you're resisting that, if you're backing away, there's that word love. Listen to this show twice, because Alan Cohen is the author of 23 popular inspirational books, and he is also a renowned motivational speaker. He is a contributing writer for the New York Times #1 best-selling series, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and his work has been featured on Oprah.com, USA Today, and The Washington Post. Right after this, you'll hear me and Scott and our conversation with Alan Cohen.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
I want to start with this concept of game face and leaving the baggage at the door. It became prevalent in the late 70s and the early 80s that it was pretty hard to leave our emotions at home, to let the craziness of our life be totally disconnected from whatever the craziness at work might be. When I was referring back and I was looking for questions to ask myself to find the answers for my work questions recently, it became clear to me I couldn't just look at my business. I had to look at me too. I had to take a look and go, okay, well, where am I? Am I solid in this? Is this a place I feel like I have confidence or not? I'm like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I've got my game face on, fake it till I make it, if you will, sometimes. Yet at the same point in time, everything flows nicely together. So I'm recognizing there may be a little bit of game face that I'm bringing to the table here. And I'm like, but do I need to? How much can I actually let go? How much resistance am I going to get to the people around me when I don't have my game face all the way on? So I would be interested in starting the conversation there, because a lot of the people that listen to this show are CEOs, founders, owners, and they feel alone at the top.
Well, my experience, Jess and Scott, is that authenticity is a universal law that continues to work wherever we are. In my world, it's not really necessary for me to leave my heart home when I go to the office, so to speak. I've succeeded in my own way because I'm a real person and people can relate to me. I'm a human being. They see my great parts and they see my not so great parts. So I have the highest respect for CEOs or managers or anybody who can be an alive, real human being in their position. Instead of, you call it game face, I call it image management. And a lot of people really prostitute themselves for image management, and it ends up leaving their heart cold and hungry because they feel I just spent 8, 10, 12 hours on my job and I was not myself in the least, or as much as I could be. I don't believe we need to really drag our home life into our work, but I think we do need to be authentic and real about who we are, because that makes us relatable. It makes us real to other people. And people are attracted to work and play with a real person rather than a robot or an image. That's how I've seen it.
You know, I'm kind of reminded, sometimes you have managers who are relating to people, being authentic to the people that surround you. But the higher up you go on the feeding chain, the further remote you are to those whom you may affect. So it may be eventually that you don't even know the names of the people who are affected by your decisions, and you might not even know the departments. How can you be authentic when things are so removed from your existence?
You have to not accept that they have to be removed. And I think it's a very unhealthy situation you described, Scott. In fact, I heard about a college president of a big college who once a week would spend a few hours in any job that he chose on the office. So he'd actually go into the dormitories and work as a chambermaid, so to speak, for an hour or two. They have a dormitory, but you clean up person in the dormitory. And so he knew every job from the inside out, which helped him relate to everybody and also helped his effectiveness. I'm a big fan of President Obama. I've been watching his videos lately, and he did some amazing things. He would just walk out of the White House, and all the Secret Service guys are going, "The bear is loose, the bear is loose." And he would walk through the streets of Washington, and he would go into Burger King, and he would go to McDonald's, and he would go to Starbucks, he'd go to a bookstore. He would just get down with the people, and that made him real and lovable and believable. I recently saw a great YouTube of his, the last press conference of Josh Earnest, who was his press secretary. Obama entered the press conference unexpectedly, and he gave a 5-minute validation of Josh Earnest for the 8 or 9 years he had served President Obama. It just totally nailed the guy with love. To me, that makes an effective leader, where you actually get in the trenches with people. You don't get aloof. You don't play games with them. And you say, I know how it feels. I know what your struggles are. I know what your challenges are. Let me feel your job from the inside out, so now I can help you be a happier worker and do your job more effectively.
If I'm at the top or somewhere at the top and I need to let go of ego and I need to let go of my shoutiness, or maybe I'm not shouty, but I'm avoiding things, I could be the exact opposite. I'm like, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Don't tell me that. Just take care of it. And I hope it's the right answer, because don't make this problem bigger than it actually already is. So you've got these two spectrums. But if we think about love and we bring love in, being on the front lines and being open, what would your first step be to make a change to somewhere in the middle of that spectrum that is authentically each individual's? Do you have a starting point, Alan?
My starting point is Course in Miracles, which says that every decision we make, every thought we think, every word we speak is a choice between love and fear. People who get balled up in corporate world or any world always are choosing between love and fear. So if you have a CEO or a middle manager who is afraid, they're not going to make healthy decisions. So if I were coaching one of those people one-to-one, I would say, well, what would you be doing if you weren't afraid? And if you had a sense of trust and self-confidence and vision, and you listen to that voice rather than the voice of fear, what would you be doing differently? And I've coached a lot of people in those positions, and it's just amazing that when you can separate those two voices of obligation and stress and guilt and punishment and pressure from the voice of confidence, trust, creativity, aliveness, sourcing from within out, it becomes extremely clear what the pathway is, because fear never works and love does. And this is a universal principle, guys. This is not something that just works in lovey-lovey relationship. This is something that works on the job, it works in your body, it works in your relationships. Every choice is a choice between love and fear. What would the voice of love say? What would the voice of fear? I don't mean love, kissy love. I'm talking about trust and confidence and a connection to source. That's what I mean by love.
And I think we need to be using the word love more in that sense. And I'm just going to be honest, because we thrive in a place of trust and confidence. If something is going on and people around me are fearful, or maybe I'm fearful, my first step has to be, how do I change that? And you started that conversation. And I actually think it's defining what trust means. Do you have a definition of trust to you that you would share with us?
Well, I have a model that actually speaks to what you were just saying. When farmers have a corral of skittish horses, what they'll do is they'll take a mule and they'll put the mule in with the horses. And the mule is a much more stable, grounded animal. And the energy of that relaxed, stable mule will actually bring the energy of the skittish horses, all of them, down. So what you have to do in that sense is to be the mule. If everybody else is freaking out, you cannot afford to join them in freaking out, because you just add into the problem now. But if regardless of circumstances, if you can just hold your space and hold your peace and keep your head on straight, you're going to be the one person in the room who has the clarity to deal with the situation and positively uplift and affect everybody else to help them make correct decisions. You have to not pay attention to circumstances and pay more attention to the energy that you're coming from when you deal with the circumstances. Einstein said that you cannot solve a problem from the same mind that created it. So if you're in the problem mind, you're not going to get there. You have to switch to solution mind, which you don't get to through fear. You get to through trust.
What is mindfulness and what role does it play?
Mindfulness means being able to step into a certain degree of awareness, a certain degree of self-awareness that transcends the polarity that seems to be consuming other people around you. Many, many years ago, you might remember the Rodney King riots in LA. I had a friend who was living there at the time, and she was phoning me when these riots were going on. And I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm just holding space. I'm just holding my peace. I'm just sitting here and sending love and holding peace." And I believe she was making a contribution to that situation. So mindfulness is basically stepping into your right mind when everybody else is in their wrong mind. It just means a higher degree of awareness than human emotions would lead you down the path of.
Is it a skill, is it a belief, or is it a value?
It's more of a skill than anything else, and of course it's a value. It's a belief, but the belief doesn't get you a lot of mileage because beliefs only pay off when you put them into action with skill. So it's just something you have to practice. I personally have a spiritual practice where I meditate each morning, and a lot of people do. And so 15 to 20 minutes of meditation in the morning sets my mind up. It puts me in the right frequency to go through my day. And believe me, on the days I don't meditate, I miss it because I have to go back and start over. It's the skill of setting your mind up so you're aligned with clarity, and the forces of nature, the forces of the world, do not have their customary power to drag you like a team of wild horses away from your peace. I tell clients, if you can hold your peace in the midst of a challenging situation, you have mastered that situation and you know exactly what to do to solve it.
We do that in our house, and we call it, we are in our whole brain, or we're getting out of our whole brain, or we have blown our top. And I use this language with my 6-year-old. He might not be able to have any words, but you can tell by the look on his face, and he's walking around like this with his hands straight up. And I'm like, okay, got it.
Putting him in his right mind. I have a friend who had a son who was about that age. I was coaching him on his behavioral issues. He wasn't a bad kid, but he would act out now and then. And I said, have you ever discovered any way to really get to him? She says, well, she said, there's a certain look I give him. And he knows that look means business. And when I know he knows I mean business, he toes the line. So isn't it interesting that she's willing to play games with him up to a certain point? But when she gives him that look, he knows that it's not going anywhere else. Now that look to me equates to right mind. This is the way it's going to work. Would you please meet me in right mind so we could both be in our right mind and something good can come of this?
That's funny. Most of the brain is devoted to facial recognition, unlike other animals. So it doesn't surprise me that you communicate so much more through the look on your face than otherwise.
That and then some, because I believe that even more than physical beings, we're energetic beings. Certainly the facial expressions communicate a lot, but I think it's the energy and intention behind the facial expression that the client or the child or the coworker picks up. I think we teach more with our being and our energy than our words or actions. Words or actions follow being and energy more than vice versa.
Yeah. I've written down the word contagious. And if you have the right mind, if you have the right quiescence, I think what I hear you saying is that that's contagious around you, like the mule's persona is contagious for the horses.
And it's not just contagious, Scott, that's a good word. It's also compelling. I saw a great video of Mother Teresa many years ago. There was a war in Beirut, and she decided that she was going to go into this war-torn city and rescue children from this children's hospital. So she made this announcement, and it's an amazing video. They show her and her nuns sitting in a couple of trucks, and they enter this city where these guys are shooting each other. And the moment these nuns and trucks enter the city, all these soldiers declared a ceasefire. And they said on both sides of the street, silently, quietly, respectfully, allowing this woman who was a force for peace to go in. They scooped up the children, drove out of the city, and then the moment they did, the guys went back to shooting each other. That is the compelling nature of somebody with a lofty intention, which we all have the power to execute if we're connected enough to our source, to our inner being and our true values.
It might just be in the everyday workplace.
Yeah. Or a war-torn workplace, or a country that's politically divided, no common ground. Our culture is consumed in insanity. I just need to say it like that. And for that reason, it behooves each of us to do what we can to stay sane. Just because everybody else is going crazy does not give you or me an excuse to do the same. We have an even more of an obligation to hold our consciousness in the right place to offset the insanity that's consuming other people. What's the alternative? To go crazy with everybody? Well, that's not as much fun as staying lined up and centered.
You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, where I'm talking with Scott today and our special guest, Alan Cohen. We've been talking about this idea of love and peace and centeredness and how that relates to where we are and what we're doing and our intentions for showing up. Behind intentions are motives, and you were just talking about this insanity that we find ourselves in. It's interesting that we go farther when we are in our right minds, yet the insanity is like a wildfire, and it can consume everything around us. Do we need to know where those are in our organizations? And if we do, how do we pinpoint those so we can avoid those wildfires and bring more stability so we have less insanity and we can have everybody in their right mind on our team as we're doing our work together?
Well, if you're in your right mind, it's very clear to see people who are not in their right mind. And to me, the idea, where do you pinpoint insanity, is it's where people are going crazy. It's where people are reacting emotionally, where people are doing bullying and power trips and manipulative games, where fear is motivating people. See, when you're in your love mind or your right mind or your clarity mind, anything that's unlike that stands out by contrast. It's like being a sane person walked into an insane institution. It's very clear to see that people are crazy. I believe that each of us, I don't believe, I know that each of us has an internal sensor, S-E-N-S-O-R, where we know when something is on and something is off. We know when somebody's lying to us. Now, you may not consciously know it, but how many times has somebody manipulated you or lied to you or cheated you and you say, yeah, I had a bad feeling about that person from day one. I knew something was off. You asked about trust earlier, Jess. This is a good circle around to that you have to come and trust your intuition and recognize that when your gut says that this is off, or this person is not a healthy person to deal with, or this is getting weird, that you have to be able to notice that and act on it, whatever that means. It could be to have a communication, or it could be to leave or do something. But you have to follow your gut in a situation like that. By contrast, on a positive note, there's certain business deals or opportunities that your gut says, yeah, just do it. And you do it and it works. At some point, we have to sink below the reasoning mind, which helps us to a degree. And we have to sink into our gut or our intuition, which is guiding us more readily and more constantly than most people realize.
We might have a set of beliefs, and we might have a discipline to be able to check in, and we might be fooling ourselves sometimes. Oh, I got this. I've got the practice. I'm doing everything every day, so I'm centered. Yet the person is walking around and everything around them is always on fire. There's always something going on. There's always crazy chaos. What would you suggest to that person to actually be like, hey, so you have these rules and these things that you're following, but they're really not working for you. It's not because you yourself are out of control, if you will. It's because everything else is around you. And I don't know about you, but I believe our external environment is a direct reflection of what's going on with us. We might be fooling ourselves in that sense. How would you suggest for those people out there that are in that place that they turn around and they go, okay, I've got to hold this mirror up to myself. How do I find the courage to do so? And how much courage does it actually take? Because I'm probably not going to like what I see.
It's a very mature person who recognizes that the world we see out there is in some way reflecting what's going on in here. James Allen, a great metaphysical writer, said that we think in secret and it comes to pass. Environment is our looking glass.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So it takes a certain maturity to say, wait a minute, if that person really is bugging me, if that person just drives me up a wall like fingernails on a blackboard, what is there in me that is so sensitive that I can't handle being with this person. And when I coach people one-to-one, that's usually the pay dirt where the transformation comes, because the ego mind would say, well, I have to manipulate this person. I have to get them to change. I have to get rid of them. But really, ultimately, it's impossible to defeat an enemy who has an outpost in your head. So you have to deal with the person in your head earlier than you deal with the person out there. If somebody can insult you, if somebody can hurt you, then on some way you're giving your power away to them, or on some level you agree with them. Eleanor Roosevelt, something like, no one can take away your self-respect unless you give it to them, or something like that. Someone else said, every doormat says welcome. So there's always an energetic agreement between somebody who's bugging you and you being buggable. But I would always look at what's going on inside of me that agrees with that person. Why can they insult me so readily? And if I can do my inner work with a coach or counselor, teacher, or seminar, that's going to give me incredible leverage to work with that person. I mean, I've done this 50 times, 100, 1,000 times in my life. And as soon as I clean up my own act, somehow I find the wherewithal to deal with the other person. It's basic spirituality, it's basic metaphysics, and it's also extremely practical in the workplace.
How would you respond to the phrase, the proof is in the pudding?
To me, that reminds me of the phrase, by their fruits ye shall know them, which means that when people are fruity in your organization, you'll know them, which means that when people are coming from an uncentered place or an out of integrity place, then weird things happen around them. I mean, we only need to look at our current political situation in America to know that when people are not coming from integrity, bizarre dramas and emergencies unfold around them. So you can usually trace a dysfunctional situation back to a dysfunctional belief or a dysfunctional skill set or a dysfunctional person. So yeah, I mean, you can use the pudding to prove what's going on, and then you need to go to the source of it rather than just rearranging the chairs on the deck of a sinking ship. That doesn't really get anybody anywhere.
Okay, I have to bring this up because you guys are all talking about food in phrases. We've been having a conversation at dinner for the last 2 nights at my house. What are phrases that we use food for that mean other things, like going bananas, and you've got proof in the pudding, and then whatever you said about the fruit all around us, right?
Food is a good example, but I wrote a recent book called The Course in Miracles Made Easy, and there's a whole chapter on how physical ailments are reflective of psychological conditions, and they're usually related to blaming somebody else for our ills. In my book, I probably have 25 or 30 examples. For example, this project is a real headache. Oh, my aching back. Or you'll be the death of me.
Yes.
Or
all of
you
those.
make me sick. Or my ex-wife is a real ball buster. Or, or
Right.
you piss me off. People would have urinary issues. A good question to ask them is, what's pissing you off in your life? And there's a long, long list of this. Really, it's a good question, because if you're having a physical malady, the question is, who is doing this to you? Who do you believe is doing this to you? Not that they're really doing it to you. That is the gold of the relationship you need to address for your healing. You can take a pill, that's fine. But ultimately, it's going to come back unless you address the source of the problem, which is a relationship issue or a fear issue or a resistance issue or a dysfunctional belief issue. And then you can get a handle on it to heal it forever, and just of taking the pill and have it come back in 6 months. It's kind of interesting because truth and success principles are constant and universal, and they've been around since the beginning of time. And the question is, whose antenna is up to absorb these principles and make them work? So the answer is yes. For those people who are willing to make the shift, there's huge fodder and huge fertility for big shifts. And some people are advancing like that. Other people are just asleep and dull and numb, and they're just plodding along like they always have been. So it's basically food is being offered, and back to your food analogy, Jess, and the question is, who is willing to partake of it? And this business, in the polarity in our country, sanity is getting saner and craziness is getting crazier. We have such a big contrast now that people are pretty much being asked to choose, what do you believe in? Do you believe in the insanity or the sanity? What side of the fence do you wish to stand on? And in that sense, the craziness is pushing a lot of people to remember what's sane and to choose that instead. So it's all good. It's all how you work with it.
There's a movie. It is a Miyazaki movie, so it's a Japanese anime, and it's called Princess Mononoke. It's about this iron town on one side, how humans are coming and they're invading the forest on one side to get rich and to have power and do all of these things. And on the other side are the spirits of the forest and the animals that live in the forest. And they're out of balance. They are completely out of balance, and they're fighting each other. It's like what you were just talking about on both of these sides, and it's getting saner and crazier. And there's this guy. He's a prince in some almost forgotten culture. His whole journey and his whole life is to look with clear eyes. He helped everybody. He helped the people in what was called Irontown, and he helped the spirits of the forest. It did not negate the fact there was going to be a big battle, and this big battle happened. But in the end, he had people on both sides. They were really confused for a long time because he's like, but you're on that side, but you're on that side, but you're on that side. We don't get it. Whose side are you on? And he's like, I'm on everybody's side. I am here where I need to be, helping in this moment, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, but right now. And it applies to what you guys are talking about right now in regards to our societal relationship, the camps we find ourselves having to choose to be in, instead of recognizing there's usually good in every form of thinking, even if it doesn't agree with our own, because that's part of our human experience. Is it's all of us together having our own experiences that make us the most amazing creatures that we are.
Good example. The part I like is that when you move away from your center, you lose your power to be effective. So that princess or whoever it was, resistance or fear dragged him down. It's kind of like Star Wars, because when Darth Vader would want to really wear Luke down, he would get him really angry. Yeah. And so the angrier he got, the more he would join the dark side of the Force. It's just a matter of choosing to stay clear, independent of the seductions for non-clarity that call to you.
And recognizing that they're in all of us. Every single one of us has that seduction, and we get to choose every single day.
Absolutely. Very well stated. Thank you.
We've been talking a lot about being centered and aware. What would you say is a starting point for somebody to go, yeah, it's going to look like resistance. Is it really resistance?
Well, you have to reframe that situation as what we call an extinction burst. And I do a life coach training. This is one of our big lessons in the training. There's two phrases we use. One is that whenever I step forward to claim a big new yes, all of my old no's, N-O-apostrophe-S, come back to greet me. And the extinction burst is a psychological phenomenon in dog training, for example. Let us say that you have a dog, and every time the dog barks, you give the dog a treat. And let's say you want to break that habit. So the dog barks, and you don't give the dog a treat. Well, what's going to happen? The dog starts barking like crazy, and the negative behavior gets exaggerated because it's being threatened. However, if you can just hang in there and refuse to give the dog a treat, even though it's making a big noise, then that behavior will go extinct. It will extinguish it. So it's the same thing with old bad habits or old bad relationships or old bad jobs, that you will be tested because there's a part of you that does not want to give up that old habit. It's a good sign because it means that you're about to break free. If you do not have an intention to make a change, the old dark voice would not come up and go booga booga. So it's really a sign that you're about to move out of the circle of fear, the circle of status quo ego comfort, and you're about to break through into uncharted freedom. And if you could just hang in there and keep moving, then eventually that negative behavior will disappear and dissolve, and it won't be a factor in your experience anymore.
So how important is it to have, in your case it might be a life coach, but how important is it to have a mentor in life?
It's very important. We all need one of some kind. You know, I don't know anybody who doesn't go to somebody for support. No man is an island, and I don't think that any of us can go it alone. My partner, Dee, is my best mentor. My dogs are my mentors because when I'm caught up on my computer, they jump on my lap and they remind me what's real. So I think that we receive grace in the fact that there are people out there who can support us. And if we're humble enough to say, I need some help with this, it's very nice to set up a weekly or monthly relationship with some kind of mentor, because Then you can check in with them. They know your issues. I recommend it highly. I think if you can choose a good, qualified mentor with integrity, it's going to really advance your personal and spiritual growth and advance your professional success as well.
The good piece, choosing somebody that is good for each of us as individuals. Do you have criteria you could suggest as a starting point?
Well, it has to be somebody who you respect, somebody with integrity, somebody who's available, somebody you can communicate with, somebody who's compassionate enough to understand your situation. But I think a deep inner feeling that I really respect this person, I can learn from them, and I want to be in their presence. That's probably the basic criterion. A lot of people who sign up for my coach training say, well, I read your syllabus on the web and it really spoke to me. I really felt like this was my energy. So I'm going to sign up trusting that because I felt that resonance when I saw your syllabus, then it's going to carry me through the rest of the program. Of course, it always does. I'm not big on mentors that are browbeaters. I mean, if you need that and like that, by all means, go for it. But I prefer kindness and gentleness and support rather than the stick method. But then a stick method works for some people, so that's fine too.
True. And there's that balance in there somewhere in the middle, that tough love that you see in matriarchs of families that are together 3 or 4 generations in a place. That's something that also could fit in there. Okay.
Yeah. I think that it's possible to say anything with love and kindness. I've had to have lots of tough conversations in my life and my career. I've had to fire people. I've had to break up with intimate partners. I've had to evict tenants. I had no shortage of difficult conversations. But I found that if I can just dig into the place where I want to say the truth and saying it respectfully and lovingly, it always works. There's this balance of honesty and kindness. Someone said that people who are brutally honest are usually more interested in brutality than honesty. So I have found a way to fire people and break up with relationships and to say it with love and kindness and seeking a win-win for everybody and realize that if something is good for me, it's going to be good for them. Usually we can exit on good terms and things work out for everybody. I've seen this time and time and time again. So I know not only that it's possible, but it really works.
You remind me of something that I believe, and I'd like you to comment on it, and that's that it's the endings that are the most important part of relationships, or at least that seems to be the thing that colors the entire relationship the most is, not necessarily what happens along the way, but the prism through which you look at the relationship. Can you perhaps comment on that?
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Scott. Well, first of all, Longfellow said that great is the art of beginning, but even greater is the art of ending. So it's easy to start a job or a tenancy or a relationship, but how you sew it up is a lot more significant than how you started. I've always found it's easier to get in than to get out. But there's a lovely story about Mickey Mantle I'd like to share if I could. When I was a kid, Mickey Mantle was the rock star of sports, and every kid wanted to be Mickey Mantle, and he was my idol, of course. And also, he was a lifelong alcoholic. Many, many years later, probably 30, 40 years later, I saw a video of him at the Betty Ford Center where he was actually in a 12-step program, and he's actually dying of liver disease because he's an alcoholic. And it was horrible. The healthy guy was now gaunt and thin, and he was wearing this Yankee cap. And someone asked him, how would you like people to remember Mickey Mantle? And he said, well, I'd like them to remember that I finally made something of myself. And I was floored because, this guy was a huge superstar, and he didn't think he made something of himself until he faced his alcoholism. Well, the PS is that after he passed away, soon after that, there was a cartoon in the news section of a newspaper, in the sports section. It showed a cartoon of Mickey Mantle now in heaven, walking arm in arm with God down a pathway. And Mickey said to God, man, I sure made a lot of errors. And God said, yeah, but you gave them a 9th inning they'll never forget. So the truth is that even though he had a rough time and he made a lot of mistakes, in his healing and his facing his issue and his coming together and his mastering it to the degree that he did, that was a masterful ending that made sense of the whole journey. So you're 100% right, Scott, that how you end things is far more important than how you begin and what you do in the middle.
For me, for you, for everybody that will come across this, there's this concept of self-reflection and this discipline of that. In business, I call it think time, because what I have found is when I do my think time in my business and when I teach business owners and senior teams to incorporate this think time in their routines, all kinds of other stuff come up besides big dreaming about business. And once those things have come up, bubbled up, and been addressed, then the dreams come. I usually don't talk about that. I talk about, yeah, dream big. This is where you do all your business. I skip the part where there's a whole lot of work first. When we're talking on air, I think there's something to that. Is it through meditation that can come up earlier? Or do people just need to take it where it comes and recognize, okay, I can't worry about paying my light bill right now because I'm not going to be able to pay my light bill until I face this thing that I must move past?
Good question. So in addition to some form of meditation or yoga or spiritual practice, or there's a lot of practices people do, I'm a big fan of taking self-nurturing breaks as much as possible. We walk our dogs, get hung up on the computers, let's go for a walk, or go to the woods, or let's do some yoga, or let's take a nap. In those moments of stepping back from immersion in the computer, immersion in the spreadsheets, immersion in the emails, you can get just so far before you hit a point of diminishing returns. At that point, you have to step back. If you don't step back, something's going to happen that's going to pull you back. Anything you can do for 5, 10, 15, I would suggest 10 or 15 minutes at least, to just get your head on straight. Go out, sit in the sun, read a book, watch a funny video, call a friend. Do something that fills your soul, that lifts you, that puts you in a different energy state. And from that state, you have access to clarity that you do not have access to when you have your nose to the grindstone and just working. And the good news is that in addition to helping you feel better, when you go back, you will have a new perspective that helps you. You could be struggling with a problem for hours. You take a break or a day off or whatever, you come back to it, and all of a sudden it's crystal clear because you have your head on straight. So it's so important to balance work with play and self-renewal. This is probably the biggest mistake that I see most people in the corporate world make, is that they do not take the time to renew their spirit, which, if they did it, would make them far more effective in their career, because then they're a balanced being. That's the whole game, is balance and integrity.
Every life experience gives us a reason to grow and change, whether we like it or not. We can say, yes, we're going to accept that change, or no, we're not going to take that change. As a business leader, when we take the time to hold up a mirror, to question ourselves, to actually say, I might not be ready to hear this, I might not be ready to see this, I may not be ready to experience this, but all this stuff around me must change for the greater good of my organization. And then, of course, my family, and of course, myself. When we choose, we start to think about the because. What are all the excuses that comes up? Who are the people who irritate us? And you know what? Whether you're reading books, whether you're actively seeking this, or whether you just want to create basic culture change so you can have different results every single day, all of these principles that we're talking about today apply. You're going to find all the program notes for this show, The Courage to Break Your Own Rules, at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P85. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 85. You can also search, do you have the courage to break your own rules? Your experience as a leader, your experience as a human, define what it means to be in the role you are in. It is bold to go after solutions, take action, and make decisions that start with a self-knowing and a self-awareness and a calm centeredness. Your clarity and your feedback loops play a key role. And I want to leave you with this question. Do you have the courage to break your own rules?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.